If you're a beginning gardener and you have not yet experienced composting, this video is for you. In today's video, I'm going to talk all about everything that I wish I would have learned about composting when I first started as a beginning gardener. Let's go. So when it comes to making your own compost, compost is probably one of the best resources for your garden in terms of not only plant nutrition, but also resources in terms of saving money. Compost can be very expensive if you buy it from a place that manufactures it or produces it, because there's quite a bit of labor that's involved in making your own compost, but it is really simple to do and anyone can do it if you have even a little bit of space. Now, we have a lot of space for our compost, but you can use a couple trash cans and make compost. It's not all that difficult, but it is such an incredible resource for your garden that I'd encourage you guys to do it. The first thing that I wish I would have learned about making my own compost when I first started gardening was that I could do it. And the reason why I'm starting out with this one is because I always saw compost as something that was bagged at the store. Now, obviously, you're a product of your environment, and my environment was not yet fully developed. I really didn't know what was available to me. I didn't really know what I was capable of as a gardener. And so I was really kind of sucked into that convenience vortex, or that convenience hole that sucks a lot of beginning gardeners in, where they think that their garden happens at the store, when in reality, a lot of your garden can actually happen right at your house. And so I wanted to start out with that one just because I think that's the first thing that was the most empowering thing for me, is realizing that I could do it and you can do it as well once you kind of learn some of the tips and tricks that we're going to talk about. The second thing that I wish I knew about compost when I first started was how fast it should really take. You see, when I was a beginning gardener, I read all these things online when I first started learning how to make my own compost. And I would read all about this stuff that's like 3-week compost, start to finish, 5-week compost, start to finish. And it really set a pretty difficult expectation to meet, because 5-week, 6-week compost is absolutely attainable and you can do that, but it takes a ton of effort. And most gardeners, when they're first starting out, don't understand how much effort that really entails. You see, you have to have the right ratios of green material and brown material. You have to have oxygen and water, and you have to be flipping it very regularly, like what we're doing right now. We're pulling out the finished stuff, and a lot of the unfinished stuff, we'll talk about that later on in this episode. So the unfinished stuff, it's going over to our unfinished bay where it's going to continue to compost. And that constant flipping and rotating process takes a lot of time and effort, but you get much faster compost. And I just had to step back and realize that my expectations were a little bit unrealistic as a beginning gardener, and the effort that I was willing to put in made my 5 to 6 week compost take more like 2 to 3 months, in some cases even longer than that, because I just wasn't putting in the effort. And that's fine. You're still going to end up with beautiful finished compost that you made yourself. It's just, you don't really want to think that you did something wrong if it's not done in 5 to 6 weeks. Just know that your effort is directly related to the amount of time your compost will take to finish. The third thing that I wish I learned when I was making my own compost is what the heck nitrogen and carbon meant in my compost pile. So when you're making your compost, you'll probably hear this come up. Well, how much nitrogen do you have? How much carbon do you have? That pertains to how much green material and brown material is in your compost pile. Green material are like leaves, grass clippings, anything that has green color to it or has a good nitrogen content. It could be something like chicken manure, which is not green but has a lot of nitrogen, right? You just happen to know that. But green material typically has nitrogen in it. So like I said, grass clippings is the most common form of nitrogen you're going to probably be putting in your compost pile. It could also be green plant material like old cabbage plants or broccoli leaves, things like that. Those are green in nature, and because they're green, they're going to contain nitrogen. And then carbon is anything brown. So if you think like dead leaves are more like carbon, or straw, hay, newspaper shreddings, anything like that, cardboard. Those are all going to be brown in color, and therefore they contain more carbon. And when you combine about a 50-50 blend of nitrogen and carbon, that's green and brown, you're going to have a great ratio to make compost. Don't get hung up too much on those ratios. Just try to get a 50-50 blend, and that's a great start in my opinion. So what I'm doing here with my compost pile is I'm essentially kind of raking through it to gather all the stuff that's uncomposted and throw it over into my other bay, which is still composting. And that brings me to the fourth thing that I wish I would have known when I first started composting, is that when you're composting, you're going to be composting a variety of different materials. Grass clippings, for instance, will compost a whole lot faster than leaves, just because of how much surface area they have. Leaves, if they're broken down and really mulched up with the lawnmower, will break down quite a lot faster, but whole leaves, compared to grass clippings, take a lot longer. Sticks and twigs, like what I'm kind of piling up a lot of those will take even longer because they have very little surface area. If we were to run those through a chipper or a lawnmower and break them up, increase the surface area, they would still break down quicker yet, but different materials break down at different times, and it's really important that if you want to add just pure compost to your garden, we'll talk more on that in a little bit, that you make sure that you sift out the finished and unfinished compost. It's really simple to do, because when you're raking through your compost, if you're finding stuff that still looks like a twig, that's more than likely because it's not fully broken down yet and it's still kind of a twig. Or if you find leaf matter or leaf litter, stuff like that, that is unbroken down, and it's best to just throw it over into the next pile or continue composting until it's all indistinguishable. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you the most nutrient content for your garden. Because until a material is completely broken down, like these grass clippings here are not fully broken down yet, in fact, they're still pretty new, they're not going to have all their nutrients ready to release into the soil, meaning your plants are really not going to have the biggest benefit. And you might also be inviting things like pests and other kind of creepy crawlies into your garden that are trying to break down and decompose that material in your compost pile. And the fifth and final thing that I learned that I wish I would have known when I first started composting was how to apply it properly in your garden. Now, we're gonna have a whole other video on re-amending your soil in your garden. We're gonna be talking about that in the fall context, so how to re-amend your garden for fall. And that video is actually gonna be the very next video we do, because we're already messing around with our compost. So it'll be a nice transition, but we don't have time to talk all about that in this video. But how you apply it to your garden really matters a lot, because if you apply compost that is semi-finished or not completely broken down yet, as I was just mentioning with kind of sifting through your compost, there's inevitably going to be stuff that is not fully broken down. Like, I can't sift it all out. That's just not practical. But if I apply it to my garden as a mulch layer, that really takes out all of the risk. Because what happens when you take unfinished compost and you apply it to your soil, if there is anything that is unbroken down, the breakdown process will still try to continue. And what will happen is a process called nitrogen sequestration. It basically robs the nitrogen from the soil to continue to break down the little bits and bobs in your compost that haven't fully broken down yet. And because of that, a lot of gardeners will end up having yellow plants or suffering from nitrogen deficiencies because they work their compost into the soil. I prefer, even if my compost looks mostly finished, to practice more of a no-till gardening approach, which is just to layer it as a mulch on top of my soil. And that way, anything that's fully broken down is at the bottom where the roots are going to be. Anything that's not broken down is lighter. It's going to stay on top and just kind of act as a mulch, cool the soil down, kind of prevent things like erosion or evaporation, and also suppress weeds, and act just like a mulch would. And so in that case, that is how I prefer to apply my compost. And it's also a really great way that's going to minimally disturb the soil. You don't want to flip the soil too much because it overall destroys the structure of the soil. So I like to just kind of layer my compost in the garden beds on top of the soil, and just let the worms and the other soil microbes do the mixing for me as they're breaking down that material. And that was a really important lesson that I learned, because I'm not a perfect composter. I don't think I ever will be. And because of that, there's always stuff that probably shouldn't be buried inside my soil that is better off on top of the soil, just breaking down slowly. And with that, I hope you guys learned something. I really hope that you guys enjoyed. We have a lot more videos on composting. There's so many videos we've done on composting. Just check our YouTube channel. We've got tons, and they're all going to kind of help you in different ways. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to share this video with a friend if you think they would enjoy it, because they probably would. So as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care.